Be sure to pre-order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion as he takes you through the ins and outs of the most explosive offense and most exciting offense in college football. You can find it on our website at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Welcome to Football Game Plan, where football makes sense. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the Playbook. Mike McCarthy is your producer today. It's the summertime and preseason is just around the corner in the NFL, and we'll get you ready for the upcoming 2019 NFL season as we preview the Detroit Lions. Now, as we kick off the season preview, let us take a look at some of the key storylines heading into the season as we go into our 4-minute offense.
In Detroit, we start with the offense. Is TJ Hawkinson worth all the hype? In the lead up to the draft, Hawkinson received a lot of fanfare as the next Rob Gronkowski. His 1,080 yards and 10 touchdowns at Iowa didn't quite match up to Gronk's 1,197 yards and 16 touchdowns. However, their blocking execution was similar. Look for him to be a primary target for Matthew Stafford in 2019 with the loss of Golden Tate. Running back Kerryon Johnson ran for 641 yards and 3 touchdowns as a rookie in 2018. However, he only played in 10 games as injuries took away from his playing time. Known as a dual threat at Auburn, Johnson also caught 32 passes for 213 yards and a score. In 2019, he'll look to be a more consistent and healthy playmaker as the Lions' running game looks to improve on its 18th ranking from last season. The Detroit Lions have amassed a talented young core of players in the last few seasons under the watchful eye of general manager Bob Quinn. One of them is wide receiver Kenny Golladay. The clear number one after Golden Tate was traded to Philly, he caught 70 passes on 119 targets. Those catches resulted in 1,063 yards, with 5 of them being scores. Between Golladay and Marvin Jones, expect a potent passing offense in 2019. Graham Glasgow has been a staple of the Lions' offensive line for the past 3 seasons, but you have to wonder if that may change. It's a contract year for Glasgow, and it's now clear Detroit is changing his position. Frank Ragnow is getting moved to center, which means Glasgow is sliding over to right guard, where he's likely to win that camp competition. Will he be re-signed? Glasgow is still relatively young, and he can play 3 different positions on the offensive line, at least at an average level. I'm expecting him to be re-signed after the season.
It's time to put this team under the microscope and go position by position to see where they stand as we head into the 2019 season, and we'll start on the offensive side of the ball at the quarterback position. Matt Stafford is entering his 11th season as the starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions and is trying to get them back to the playoffs for the first time since 2016 and hopefully their first playoff win since 1991. And on the docket this year as well for Stafford is to be able to lead his squad to their first division title since 1993. I think Stafford is capable of doing that, just not capable of doing it by himself. Over the course of his career, he's averaged over 540 pass attempts per season, which averages out to be about 33 attempts a game. Maybe that number should be lower. It's probably why the Lions invested so much into improving their ground game and loaded up on tight ends. Stafford doesn't have to throw it that many times to be effective. We've seen him be judicious before, and he also has shown a flair for the dramatic, leading the Lions to 26 fourth-quarter comebacks and 33 game-winning drives in his career. There's some promise in the backfield with Kerryon Johnson returning to full strength. Despite only starting 7 games, Johnson led the team in rushing with 641 yards and a healthy 5.4 yards a carry average. I think because he was banged up a bit at Auburn and has already missed time in the NFL with injury, it's important for Detroit to find a capable RB2 to help lessen that load. That's why they re-signed Zach Zenner, extended him to a 2-year deal, grabbed CJ Anderson via free agency, and also drafted the speedster Ty Johnson out of Maryland. Theo Riddick also brings good receiving skills, but we'll see how he'll find his way in what seems to now be a crowded backfield. I think there is some concern here about the receiving core of Detroit. More questions than answers right now, at least. The one answer seems to be Kenny Golladay, who has made steady growth since being drafted 3 years ago, and he looks to take over the title of wide receiver 1 within his offense. That is made possible by the injury bug that seemed to have snake-bitten Marvin Jones. It's never nothing serious, just enough to keep him not as effective as he should be. He's still a good player, just has to stay healthy. Danny Amendola and Jermaine Kearse were veterans that were added to the mix this year. In my opinion, 2 rookies from Old Dominion in Travis Fulgham and John Duhart have a great opportunity to make the roster as well as making an impact in the passing game. Both guys have similar game, big wideouts that are strong after the catch, and almost like what they have already in Kenny Golladay. So that'll be something to watch for as training camp begins. At tight end, Detroit invested heavily here in the draft with TJ Hawkinson going in round 1 out of Iowa and Isaac Nauta out of Georgia going in round 7. They also signed Jesse James via free agency, who was recently with the Pittsburgh Steelers. All three guys are very good receiving options, with Hawkinson and Nauta having strong ability in line as well. The tight end position may slightly be ahead of the receiver group right now heading into camp. I really like what the Lions have up front. I think the combination of Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, and Graham Glasgow is a really good one. Ricky Wagner is as steady as they come at right tackle. Yes, he can be better, but he's not a liability is what I'm trying to say. The question is at right guard, where there may be a battle for that job. But to me, the answer should already be Tyrell Crosby, the second-year man out of Oregon. He has very good athleticism, enough to where he could be an answer at right tackle if it came down to it. But I think he should be their starting right guard if it was my decision. Kenny Wiggins has eyes on that position as well, so it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out at camp. Detroit is solid from a depth perspective as well, with Oday Abouche, Luke Bowanko, amongst others. And this is how I graded out the Detroit Lions offensive units. On the defensive line, the Lions have some talent, especially on the interior with Snacks Harrison and A'Shawn Robinson. Both guys don't get as much credit as they deserve for the job that they do on both ends of defense. Building out the edges was a goal of the offseason for Detroit, which is why the signing of Trey Flowers was considered a big one. He's coming over from New England as a player with some upside that could get them double-digit sacks, or at least that's the hope. On the opposite side, Deshaun Hand quietly played some really good ball last year and could be on the verge of a breakout. Romeo Okoro provided good minutes last year for Detroit, finishing with 7.5 sacks, leading the Lions in that category. And rookie 4th-round pick Austin Bryant out of Clemson also figures to be in the rotation as well. I actually like the linebacking core here for Detroit. I've always admired the game of Devin Kennard. He's an overall solid player that's an edge setter and a guy that can pressure the quarterback. Christian Jones brings good versatility to the unit that can play with his hand off or on the ground. And Jared Davis showed last year how much better he was on the outside as he started to live up to the first-round billing. Now, in the second round out of Hawaii, they drafted Jelani Tavai, and to me, he's a carbon copy of what they already have in Kennard, outside of the fact that I feel as though he can play all three positions. So I guess that's the difference between the two players. He's got very good football IQ and range, and I'm interested to see how Jalen Reeves-Maybin fits into all this. He's another run and chase linebacker that should figure into the plans defensively. But keep an eye on two undrafted rookie free agents in Malik Carney out of North Carolina and Trey Lamar out of Clemson. Now, Carney can bend the edge and pressure the QB, while Lamar was one of my favorite inside backers to watch this past draft class. I love how he's an old school thumper, two-down player that has a chance to stick. I think there's a case to be made that the Lions' strength on defense is in their secondary. Darius Slay is a star, one of the best corners in the game. Tracy Walker and Quandre Diggs give Detroit two really good prospects at safety, and bringing in Justin Coleman and rookie Amani Aruwariye out of Penn State helps strengthen them at nickel and perhaps cornerback too, respectively. I say that because Teez Tabor is in a pivotal year at corner. The former second-round pick has to elevate his game in order to stick around. He has to find that confidence that made him such a really good prospect at Florida. Now, there are no shortage of candidates like Mike Ford, Jamal Agnew, Rashawn Melvin that are more than capable of holding that job down if need be. What head coach Matt Patricia needs from this group to do more of this year is actually turn the ball over. Now, here's how I grade out the defensive units for the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions made a heavy investment this offseason in the NFL draft by taking TJ Hawkinson at number 8 in the first round. But what they did was emphasize the fact that they're going to be a power team this year, whether that's running the football, but also be in a power situation if they want to throw the football as well. And I'm going to show you how they can utilize all three tight ends that they brought in this offseason on the field at the same time to not only help them out in the running game, but also in the passing game. And the guys I'm talking about is Isaac Nauta, right here out of Georgia. They drafted him. They drafted TJ Hawkinson, and they brought in Jesse James from the Pittsburgh Steelers via free agency. Now, this is a traditional old school power I formation. I love this formation because it's just straight downhill. My guy is better than your guy. Base blocks everywhere, and you can run the football. As you can see, if you just want to strictly run the football downhill to the power set, you have big on big. You can have a combo to the backer. You can lead out here. You can even lead him up here and get the backer if you want to. You can even be creative and kick him and then pull this guy around. There's so much stuff you can do out the power eye as far as running is concerned. But in a passing situation, you're still in a good spot because you put the defense in the bind to match up. Like, all these guys are really good receivers, and that always gives you problems. Normally, when you bring in 3 tight ends, 2 of them are just essentially extra offensive linemen and fullbacks. But in this situation, these guys are also pretty good receivers. So you have a mismatch advantage if you're Detroit with these guys on the field at the same time, because I'm willing to bet there's not 3 backers that can cover 3 tight ends of this caliber, in my opinion. So what you could do, depending on how they play TJ Hawkinson here on the outside, if they put a safety on him, that's great. They put a corner on him, you know that's where you have to go. So it's automatic go for the tight end out of Iowa. You want to utilize his athleticism and take that jump ball opportunity. What that does is open an opportunity here for Jesse James over the middle of the field, because you want him to cross the face of the safety or corner. That's one way to get him the football. At the end of the day, you can motion him out, not out, and makes it an I formation, and it's all going to depend whether or not they walk a safety or corner over there. You run him up the field, you motion him out, and you still may end up being in a better situation just to run your straight ISO. So it all depends on what you want to do. But having these options of having 3 receiving threats on the field at the same time, defense sees 3 80 numbers, big guys coming on the field, they're going to think run formation, especially if this is a second and short, third and short situation. But you are still in a great spot to throw the football if you're the Detroit Lions, which is why I think their tight ends, their 3 tight ends, their trio of tight ends they have this year, will be on the field more than people expect them to be, which could help their offense out in a whole. The Detroit Lions made drastic improvements this offseason to get better defensively. One in particular was bringing in Trey Flowers from the New England Patriots. They also drafted Jelani Tavai from Hawaii to be a big linebacker with a lot of range. They're going to make some changes in the secondary, perhaps moving Tracy Walker, the former Raging Cajun, into the lineup as their starting free safety. But what I like about what they have now this year, especially defensively, I think they have a great opportunity to really capitalize on what they did toward the end of the season last year with their defense playing a lot better. Their front 4 has the ability to apply pressure. Let's try to create a pressure for these guys to utilize. And you see what we have drawn up here. I put everyone by their initials. So we have Trey Flowers, Snacks Harrison, Ashawn Robinson, and Deshaun Hand. And what we're going to do is get front 4 pressure. And the reason why I like their linebacking core is because they all have range and ability in pass coverage. Jelani Tavai is a big, long, athletic Mike backer, but can also play Sam. Christian Jones does a great job, not only at the point of attack, but he can cover tight ends and backs, and is also very apt in coverage. And we know Jarrad Davis played well in coverage last year and plays better, in my opinion, on the weak side. So you can have 3 backers out there on the field, still good versus the run, but also still good versus the pass. Quadri Diggs and also Tracy Walker right here. So what we're going to do is really tie up this tight end at the line of scrimmage. So therefore, we're going to run a little game up front. We're going to shoot Trey Flowers right in that B gap. Try to create a double team, because what we're going to do is run Snacks Harrison, who's normally here as the nose tackle, but we're going to give him a responsibility to get back across that center's face in that weak side A gap. Bring Ashawn Robinson around and attack here. Contain defender there. He's going to drop back in coverage. We can even send Quadri Diggs if we want to. Tavai is good in coverage as well, and we have Tracy Walker back deep. So what I like about Detroit is the fact that these guys finally started to get it last year defensively. They added some pieces. Trey Flowers, Tavai is a guy that's really good. I think people are going to be surprised at how good he is in coverage and what he brings to the table. But we're going to see this Detroit Lions defense take a major step forward this year and be in the conversation within that division of being one of the better defenses because of what they did this offseason in bringing in positive personnel.
Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford. Said it earlier, Darrell Bevell is now their offense coordinator. Expect them to run the ball 50 to 55% of the time, like they did to a guy who's a future Hall of Famer, Russell Wilson. So imagine what they're going to do to Matt Stafford. Kerryon Johnson. That being the case, you want the running back for Detroit. Even C.J. Anderson, who got a little bit left in the tank. I think that there's an opportunity for someone else to be the number 3 running back, which is essentially the number 2. But Yeah, you can draft C.J. Anderson late in the round because you want a Detroit running back this year. Kenny Golladay, probably the only receiver on this team that's going to have value anywhere near where he's drafted, because he's probably going to end up being drafted in that 7th or 8th round. He'll probably get value there because of the big body. Marvin Jones will not. Unless you're drafting Marvin Jones in that 12th or 13th round and treating him kind of like Mo Sanu, you're not going to get value out of him. And then there's T.J. Hockenson. Traditionally, rookie tight ends don't do well. They may try to force feed him the ball since they took him 8th overall. I'm of the mindset that I think Hockenson, while talented, he is not Gronk. Do not let anyone convince you of that. He will not play like Gronk. He will not function like Gronk. He will not put up Gronk numbers. Stop it. But he's a good enough player to put up decent numbers. I just don't see it from a fantasy standpoint this year. And I don't really see it much from a fantasy football standpoint, just in general. But I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, so it could happen this time. And then the last guy, you do want Matt Prater, playing indoors, playing for a team that has struggles on the goal line, even though they want to run the ball. And when you play ball control, even if you don't get to the goal line, you get to the 35, they're not punting. They're going to kick long field goals, and you can do that. So he's a good kicker to have in mind. And people will probably forget about him trying to rush to Justin Tucker and Greg Zuerlein, when he'll probably only have about 6 or 7 less points than him on the season.
Troy Anthony here, bringing you the best bets for the Detroit Lions. The Lions win line opens up at over under 6.5 games. At plus 100, I'm going with the under on that one. They play in a really tough division that has 3 teams that are potential playoff bound teams. They also have to see the AFC West and the NFC East this year. I do like the over in their Week 1 matchup against Arizona though. At minus 110, you can get the over under 48.5. We know Stafford can sling the rock, but I think that Kingsbury offense is going to torch some teams this year. That's all for now. I'm Troy Anthony. Follow me on Twitter, @FootballFandom, replacing the O's with zeros.
I'm David Hassagen, and this is Huddle Up with Hassagen. We're going to be firing off some quick takes about the Detroit Lions. Let's start with this year's breakout candidates, Emery. Who do you like on both sides of the ball?
On offense, I like Tyrell Crosby. I like them coming out of Oregon, offensive tackle. I think he has a chance to probably slide in there and play this year and be a starter maybe on the right side. I like him a lot. And also on defense, another raging Cajun, you got to go with Tracy Walker. I think this is a year he takes another step in his progression. Big-time playmaker, long, lanky guy that can match up in the slot but also play deep. I like him this year. I think he takes a significant step this year in that defense for Matt Patricia.
Let's talk about some impact rookies. There was a lot of questions about Hockenson in the first round, but do you think he makes a big impact this season?
He's going to have to, because they picked him 8. You took a tight end 8. You better give him every opportunity to be successful. And I think they're going to do that with why they drafted him and in conjunction with what they did around him as far as adding other tight ends. They're going to make sure they put Hockenson in position for success. I really like defensively Jelani Tavai out of Hawaii. I was at the Army game where he really stood out, and it's hard to stand out against service academies where they run the option because you have to be disciplined. He's a super athletic guy, but was also able to maintain his discipline and made a lot of plays.
Let's talk about some X factors this year for Detroit. Who do you think is going to be that guy that's going to be the real it factor for them?
Running back Kerryon Johnson. He was starting to hit his stride last year before he got hurt. And so now you expect him to be healthy for a full 16-game season, expect him to have a lot of success. And Trey Flowers, they need pass rush. They brought him in hoping that he could be that guy. He's going to have to be the guy. If he can get the pass rush that they needed, then this defense is definitely going to be vastly improved this year.
Who were the surprises out of camp for Detroit this season?
I would say those Old Dominion wide receivers that are undrafted free agents. They did a great job in bringing Travis Fulgham and John Duhart. So 2 Old Dominion receivers. And what's funny about those 2 guys, they're both 6'3", 215. So they got big guys that can run, that can play outside or inside. Now, defensively, Jamal Agnew. I think people are forgetting how good of a corner he is because how good of a returner he is. Came out of San Diego as a rookie and made the All-Pro team as a returner. But people are not giving him his credit for his ability to play in the slot. And I think here's an opportunity for him to showcase that and remind folks why he was such a highly graded player on Football Game Plan Scouting's prospect rankings as a corner. Yes, his return game is fantastic, but his ability as a corner, as a slot corner, is being criminally underrated.
There were a lot of rumblings in Detroit last season. What's your reason for concern and optimism this year for the Lions?
I think the biggest concern would be if they don't have any progress in year 2 under Matt Patricia. That's the biggest concern. At times, you saw them play extremely well.
Right.
Then other times you saw them just completely look flat. I think the concern is, okay, maybe they don't take that next step. Maybe they're not buying on the message, but they have to find a way to find consistency this year. That would be my biggest concern. Do they have the consistency? And do they have the game breakers on the outside?
Yep.
That's going to be the biggest thing. Do they have, I'm talking about perimeter threats at receiver and also as pass rushers. And the optimism is the fact that, yes, they added the tight ends. They added Trey Flowers. They're getting Kerryon Johnson back healthy.
Right.
The rededication to the running game in conjunction with what they do on defense as far as stopping the run and the fact they got good linebackers, if they can get back in good graces with Darius Slay and get him back out there, Detroit has enough to where they can win with run game, defense, and special teams. So that right there gives you optimism. Hunt the Czar, the Playbook hearing. Joining me now is fellow football game plan analyst Troy Anthony for this 4 Downs with the Czar segment, continuing our preview of the Detroit Lions. As we take a look at the road to the Super Bowl for the Lions, I'm just going to say this right now, get out the way. They took a tight end 8 overall. Like, this tight end better be Dwight Clark. He better be, Rob Gronkowski. He better be Brent Jones.
Can he be a Vernon Davis?
I don't know, because he has to be Vernon Davis, right? He has to be something. I have to be able to watch the Detroit Lions on offense and say, you know what? Their tight ends are really killing it out there, because they bring in T.J. Hockenson in the draft. They also added tight ends via free agency. They want to utilize more double tight end sets. Now, all jokes aside, if you have one good tight end, you're very tough to defend. If you have two, it's next to impossible, because it's tough to find guys to match up versus these bigger athletes that we used to call athletic offensive tackles. They block, but they can also go out there and catch passes. So if the tight ends pace the offense, you know what that means? The running game is going to be great. It means the red zone offense is going to be phenomenal. So they need their tight ends, all jokes aside, to lead the way to help open up everything else on the offense.
Speaking of the running game, that's my number one with Detroit. Where is their running game? They haven't had a solid number one running back since when? Yeah, since when? It's been running back committee for years. You had Bush, Theo Riddick, LeGarrette Blount. It's been person after person. Now, I like Kerryon Johnson. Came in his rookie season last year. He had a decent season. I would like to see him capitalize this year. But they also brought in C.J. Anderson. So my thinking is, are they going to go with running back committee with that 1-2 punch? Because C.J. Anderson had a strong end of the year last year. Is he going to compliment Kerryon Johnson? Are they going to allow Kerryon Johnson to get the carries with C.J. Anderson spelling him? I want to see what they do, but they have to do something with the running game, because this is just getting repetitive over and over with them each season.
Well, I mean, that ties into the point I made earlier, like you said, with the tight ends, because if the tight ends are doing well, then both Johnson and Anderson will do great. Also, Johnson has to stay healthy. I would look at the defense. Matt Patricia is a defensive guy. That's like if I was the head coach of the Detroit Lions, you better expect my running backs to be phenomenal. So I expect this defense to really be better this year, in particular the pass rush. They have to be able to rush the passer. They didn't address it with the 8th overall pick in the draft. They were able to add some guys in free agency and later on in the draft, guys that can affect the pocket, some depth guys. But do they have that guy on the outside that can bring it? And if they can't get to the quarterback in this division that features an Aaron Rodgers, that features a Kirk Cousins, that features a Mitch Trubisky that can scramble. So you have to be able to affect the pocket. If they can't find a pass rush, it's going to be a problem. But if they do, this team is special.
I believe this team collectively is another one who needs to learn how to win. There are T's. One season they're supposed to be good, decent, and they're atrocious. Next season they might go 9-7 when you thought that they were going to be atrocious. I don't understand how they do it. Last season they started off 1-2. Do you know how that happened? They lost to the Jets in a blowout week 1. Sam Darnold's first game in the NFL. Then they lose to the Niners. But then they go ahead and beat the Patriots. I don't understand what's the equilibrium here. They need to learn how to win, and it has to be consistent. But I like that they hired Patricia last season. I think he's going to be a good head coach, and I think he's going to be able to turn around this franchise.
Yeah, he's building this team inside out. We talked about the tight ends. I think their offensive line is going to be a lot better than people give them credit for it. Defensively, I love the second level. The linebackers are really good. They got guys that can run, stop the run, also be effective in pass coverage. So if it's up to Detroit to make some serious noise this year, they're going to have to find that consistency on offense and find pass rush. If they do, they won't only win the NFC North, but they can find themselves playing bonus football in February. I have Detroit finishing 4th in the NFC North. I think this team will be a much better running football team this year thanks to the new additions at tight end, the rededication to the ground game, and defensively they'll be much better as well. So I think this team will be in a lot of ball games. I don't think they have enough to overtake the other teams in the division like Chicago, Green Bay, or even Minnesota. For the season preview, I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the Playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of our social media accounts, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to Football Game Plan Podcast on iTunes, where you can find our NFL All 32 podcasts, our fantasy football starting lineup, as well as our Scout Team podcast, and leave us a 5-star rating. Also, subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network, located at youtube.com/Football Game Plan. Finally, every Thursday and Friday evening at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, be sure to check out the Football Game Plan show on the Game Plus Network. Check with your cable provider for channel listings.